Welcome everyone to the call. This is the Hyper Monthly Innovation Series. We have a few people joining the call now. We'll just allow them to gradually join. Feel free to rename yourself in the chat room on Zoom. You can also put your name and you can put the location of where you are dialing from. My name is Charles OJ. I'm the founder here at Hyper Group, and I want to personally welcome us all to the August edition of the Hyper Monthly Series. We help our audience learn more about innovation. We share new tools and insights to help them grow. Whether you're an entrepreneur or working in a large organization, this series is for you. Today, we have a very interesting topic, the innovation sweet spot, finding and confirming problem solution fit. And while developing this session, I thought to bring someone really, really close to me, a very dear friend of mine who is familiar with the corporate world and is also an active entrepreneur and spent many, many years in this space. Someone who has hands-on experience in building products and developing solution in both worlds, whether it's the corporate world or the startup world. Mr. Emmanuel Oluwatosin is the founder of Startup Code Canada, and he has over 20 years of commercial innovation, technology, and product development experience. He's worked with companies like Nokia, he's worked with Microsoft, and most recently, he is the founder of Startup Code in Canada. He's worked for Glow as well and did his MBA at Manchester Business School in the UK. We are so honored to have him today. Well, Emmanuel, do you want to say hi to the audience?
Yeah, thanks so much just for welcoming me. Hello, everyone. It is an honor to be here. And hopefully, we have a great time together.
Awesome. Great. All right. I'd love to start the conversation. And I remember our days in corporate, trying to drive new products, new services, new markets. I want to ask, just out of curiosity, what key experiences made you consider or dive into product market fit in also a problem solution fit in the different projects you worked on? And why is problem solution fit so important from your own experience and perspective?
Okay, the interesting thing is, there is a saying that when you are starting a business, you launch, you build, then you go to the market and start looking for the customers. But things have changed now, and one of the things we found out is unless you have a rich uncle or rich father, the resources you have when you're starting out as an entrepreneur is very limited. So which means you need to scratch revenue, SAP. And again, you don't want to waste your resources. So you want to be sure that anything you're putting your limited resources on, it's something that you validated and something that you know will work. And that is why it is very, very important. I know recently in Twitter and in this space in Nigeria, people were talking about Nepo and Lapo babes, that kind of things. And the interesting thing is when two people are going to business, what will happen determines depends a lot on the kind of resources they have access to. If your parent is rich and you're going to business, the kind of mindset you go in is slightly different. You are relaxed. You can spend a lot of time trying to get product to the market without actually getting revenue. But if you don't have that kind of resources, from day one, you have to focus on revenue. And some used to tell until you have a problem solution that people are willing to pay for, then what you have is an expensive hobby, not a business.
Yes. Oh my God, we're gonna have a wonderful time today as our audience are trickling into the room. Please feel free to post your your questions on the chat in the chat box. I will be looking at the chat box from time to time and will be taking those questions real time. Also, rename yourself in Zoom. Feel free to put your first name. If you want to add your last name, that's great. But also add the location you are dialing in, you're calling in from. We want to welcome everybody. It's really going to be interesting. And Tosin, it's very interesting. You start off with why problem solution fit is really, really important. And just in the news, one of the headlines in the news this month, a couple of days ago, is this IPO that's done by Figma. Figma is a big technology company that offers design tools to product designers, developers, and what have you. And this is a very big valuation and a very big milestone for them in their own journey. And it's a testament that shows how crucial it is to solve a real problem for users. And it's an interesting use case where we see a perfect match between what users need and what Figma is offering. So there are synonymous and there are a lot of benefits once innovators are really able to bring together the right problem and the right solution. So I'm really excited about today as we talk about defining, of course, defining problem and solution fit, defining MVP, and we'll talk about MVPs, and we'll talk about that a lot today. We do some deep validation into understanding the user and their problem. Like, how do we validate so that we can get that fit? MVP, marginal minimum viable product. We'll look at how do we scope it, how do we iterate it. A lot of times, we are very excited about the solution and we want an ideal or perfect solution. But from our experience and learning, we realize I just need a minimum viable product that delivers something that the user or the customer really, really wants. And then we'll look at a few tools and techniques that we can use to de-risk our process, our innovation process, especially as it relates to getting to that stage of problem solution fit. And throughout the webinar, we will be taking questions. So I really want to encourage our audience present to share their questions in the chat room, and I'll be picking it up from time to time. So let's dive in. But before we dive in, I would like to ask, from your point of view, how would you frame the ultimate goal of this webinar for our audience, innovators on the call today? What is that one thing you would really like to achieve, Emmanuel, from this webinar?
So I think at the end of the day, if people are able to understand the difference between what the problem is and what someone is willing to pay for, because sometimes we as founders, we have this problem that we love so much and we think we've found the solution to it and we're ready to take it to the market. But the interesting thing is what we think the solution is, what we think the problem is, might not be the problem that people or potential target audience are facing. So if you're able to understand the difference between what a real problem is and what people are willing to pay for, then we have done a good justice of what the topic we are discussing today. Also, we also need to know when to kill an idea or pivot.
Mhm.
There's no point wasting resources on things that are not working. Like I said, unless you have
Yeah.
unlimited resources, you should be able to pivot and just move on so fast. And thank God, there are a lot of technology that allows us to be able to do that recently. So we're going to be talking about that also.
Interesting. I mean, it's really cool you talk about resources, because whether you're in a big, large company or whether you're an entrepreneur, resources are are limited, and you want to make the most with what you have and deliver something that takes you to the next phase of traction and resource access. So I'm really curious to learn from some of the things you'll be talking about as we look at this very exciting topic. And there is no better way to kick off but to really define the different terms here, starting with product, with problem, solution, fit. Many innovation projects, whether new services or products, they aim to delight customers, right? And to have a positive impact on the firm's top and bottom line. The goal here in most cases is to drive exponential impact in, let's say, 36 months. Like innovators want to deliver something substantial, they want to deliver it quickly. Their boards or their management, they want to see the results very quickly. Investors want to see results as well. But there are a couple of milestones, very important milestones that we need to consider. One is, of course, problem solution fit. And the second is then product market fit. And then we have scale. Um, how do you define each of these? Let's start with problem solution fit and then product market fit. And what is the difference between both? Because a lot of times innovators kind of like mix it up. What's the difference between both?
Okay, so we have to look at problem solution fit. So it's at that point where you think you've cracked something. So you have a solution that you're taking to the market. And before you can get to that point, you must have done what we call problem discovery. And there's something I always try to tell people that a problem can never be defined. It can only be discovered. So even
Hmm.
when you write something down and you think this is a problem you are trying to solve, by the time you engage in customer discussion, things might change. And that's why it's always good to have an open mind. Have an open mind, you write something down, and what you are trying to do at the problem solution fit stages, there are three questions you are trying to ask with your problem discovery phase. So the first question is more around, do customers actually want this? Which
Mm,
means what you are trying to build, do customers actually want it? That is one. Then two, you want to be sure that are you able to monetize this? Can you actually charge for this thing? So that is the second question you're answering when you're doing problem solution fit. Then the third question is more we talk about, can we build this? So I can say the question of visibility, if you can build it, can easily be answered now if one and two are answered correctly. Because there are a lot of tools now that allows you to actually put something together, the MVP that we talk about, and that you can take back to the customers to validate if they actually want it and they are willing to give you their credit card or pay for that service. So until you're able to answer those three questions and have something that someone is willing to pay for, then you don't have what we call the problem solution fit.
mm,
Now, when we come to product market fit, you have the solution that you have taken to the market, and this is now a game of numbers. Yeah, I think someone said for if you're in the B2B business, you need to have, I think, like 50 paying customers for a B2B for you to think that, okay, you have product market fit. And if it's a B2C, you have to be looking at 1,000 customers minimum. And those customers must be paying. They are not just customers using your service for free. They must be paying. And it is when you get that product market fit that you can now double down and pump in resources. But until you get to that, any resources you are putting is a waste of your time, waste of your resources. So, but the
interesting.
critical parenting is just that problem solution fit. Many of us don't achieve that problem solution fit, and we go straight to product market fit. We start chasing customer around because we are not listening to them. and the solution we are bringing to the market is not helping them to solve their problem. We have a lot of situation around that where people maybe raise funds and just dump money on the solution which they think should work, whereas they are solving a wrong problem.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So if I understand correctly, problem solution fit is that point where you've identified a real pressing problem for either your users or your customers or any of your stakeholders, and you've developed a solution, a simple solution that they are willing to pay for. All right. And
Absolutely.
this solution would normally call it the minimum
Viable product.
viable product. And this is a very common term in the innovation space. But a lot of times we make mistakes around MVPs. From your point of view, what are the biggest MVP misconceptions that still cause teams to fail early?
So I think I would say one, people think that, oh, if it's a nice feature, then someone will pay for it. Or the fact that, oh, because I have the resources to build it, then I should just put it in. And it's always a mistake because you end up building something that people will not use. And that's why a lot of organizations, even when you talk about Google, Microsoft, they launch products and they quickly shut it down.
Hmm.
And I remember there's a product Google launched that time to compete with Facebook. I've forgotten the name now, around social media. They thought because they had the distribution sorted out that people will jump on it. But it was clear within a
Yeah,
few months that people didn't want
yeah,
that service.
yeah. I remember
And
that
they
product.
and they shut it down immediately.
I think it was
But
it Google Plus?
yeah, Google
Something
Plus, yeah, Google
Google
Plus, yeah,
Plus. Yeah,
Google
I remember
Plus.
that product.
And if a corporate organization can do that, why can't a startup? Startup should even be moving faster. Because the fact that you have the resources to build something doesn't mean people will build it. And because, and like I said earlier on, we have this misconception that if you build it, the customer will come.
Yeah,
No, we need to change our mindset from that. We have to build something that people will pay for. It is better to just have one feature, collect
yes,
money from people, and start adding other features to it than just go because you have the resources or you have the technical know-how. Because the mistake we make again is, especially technical founders, they believe they
yeah.
have the skill set to build anything. They just put everything together and now start looking for customer to pay for it. So
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean, it's a very interesting example you made about Google and Facebook. These are two resource heavy, deep pocket companies. And for something like Google Plus, after many years to eventually not, be a good fit in that space, indicates that you don't, it doesn't mean because you have the resources, that doesn't guarantee that you will succeed. All right. And
absolutely,
I think entrepreneurs and innovators, especially in highly constrained environments where the budget might not be there, the resource might not be there, they're actually in an advantage because they have to now really double down and be frugal to really pick what is essential and do the right things in the right time. And I looked at this slide, it shows on the left hand where we want to put everything into the product. We want it to be functional, we want it to be reliable, want it to be usable, we want it to have a fantastic design all at once versus the right way to do it, where you start with functionality, like can this thing actually work? Does it fit with a actual need that the user or the customer has? And then you then start adding stacks as you go along. You move to reliability and then you move up. I think design is last. It doesn't have to, the MVP doesn't have to look good. I remember in one of our projects, and I know we're going to talk about, building, but we basically, our MVP was a ledger book. Like it was totally non-digital. It was a ledger book, a piece of paper with some ruled lines, and the customer was collecting. We were just taking records. And then from there, we put a small paper. We printed some voucher cards with, fake money, in other words, but we were giving points. So it was very low fidelity. So minimum means minimum. What is the minimum function that these customers or users can actually pay for? And getting MVP right is one thing that it's one early step that is very important in the problem solution fit um,
Yes,
life
person.
cycle. Yeah, let's take this conversation a little further with a use case. And and this use case is a tale of two popular firms in Nigeria in the food delivery industry.
Yeah.
And
The
on
one with
one
deep
hand,
pockets.
yes. One with deep pockets. I mean, Jumia has IPO'd. I think they IPO'd in New York, right? In the New York
Yes, sir.
Stock Exchange, and they really have a lot of money. And then an outliner, a new entrant called Child Deck. They've only been around for about 3 years. Jumia, of course, they raised a lot of cash. It seems they were solving the wrong problem. And Child Deck, they focused on everyday meals versus pizzas, and with very fast delivery times. Merchants and riders just love their solutions. But Emmanuel, what can you tell us about this case as we looking at problem solution fit?
Yeah, so I think the critical difference between both organizations, one understand the local market dynamics,
Yes.
and because that's very, very important. When people talk about Nigeria, we see a lot of people carrying smartphones around, but the low to mid-end market still win the race ultimately. We have internet penetration, but there are still some areas where the internet access fails. So one thing that the Chadek did is really interesting was deploying SMS notification for the order. And that is one. Then two, like you said, they went after the people, the vendors that people actually want, the amala joints, the all these kind of things. The typical booker that you want to go and eat. But instead of you having to go to that booker to order food, then they can bring that food to you. So those two actually change a lot of things. Jumia made a mistake of designing their Jumia food for like an e-commerce business. So like you
Yes.
mentioned, they are going after the maybe Chicken Republic, going after the pizza, Domino, all these kind of
Yeah.
things.
Very
And
typical traditional e-commerce
traditional
business.
e-commerce business, and that is a major problem. But the key thing that turned things around for Child Deck was that SMS notification and onboarding
Yeah.
those bookers. Because
Why is
when
that?
people here, yeah, so when SMS can never fail, when you have an app and you push maybe do implement push notification, what normally happens is sometimes there's a delay. You don't get that notification. And when someone places an order and you don't get that notification on time, then you don't prepare the order. So the person might be frustrated and cancel the order. But with SMS hardly fails. It hardly fails. Even when I was in Nokia, we played a solution that the bearer was SMS. SMS is always found to be very reliable. It will always deliver, no matter where you are. Even whenever you have maybe one bar signal on your phone, you can still get a text message.
Interesting. Interesting. I mean, I read that. I read an article from Afri Digest, and they really went deep into analyzing, child X evolution. I think in line with our topic today of really discovering the problem, I think Childbirth was able to focus on everyday meals. I think that was one very insightful
Yes,
thing
the typical
I
mala,
saw.
yeah,
Exactly what people eat every day, not what they buy weekends or once a week. Like amala. I mean, you were telling me this week that one of the Amala joints did almost 1 billion in sales over
Yeah,
a period
yeah,
of,
they did.
of
They actually
time.
did I think 2.7 billion naira,
Amala
500,000, yeah, 500,000 deliveries. That is Amoge, okay, okay, or something.
selling Amala,
Tell me Amala.
So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting, and this is really a fantastic example of what happens when you really discover the right problem and then match it with the right solution. And just in a
So
short span of 3 years, they've reached 1.5 million
yeah,
customers. Go on,
maybe one
please.
thing I can, yeah, Charles, maybe one thing I can add also is now child deck, they don't charge the vendor commission. They actually
Interesting.
add their own fee to the customer that is paying. So if you are buying a full, let's say you're buying a full 4,000 naira, that 4,000 naira goes to the vendor. They add their own commission on top of it, and the customers are willing to pay for it. Unlike Jumia Food that charges the vendor, they were charging the vendor commission, percentage of the amount. So if
Wow.
you are using, yeah, if you are using Child Deck, you see the breakdown of the bills and you decide what you want to pay for it or not.
Very interesting. So it wasn't only the consumer in this case that they were designing for. They were designing for the merchants, and they were designing for the merchants. In this case, the merchants had more profitability because unlike traditional e-commerce where you collect a commission and eat into their pricing, so out there basically know what sell what you want to sell, price what you want to price, we'll just add on top of it, and the consumer will make a choice whether they want to buy or not. There's also this thing of their riders as well. What is the story? The riders. The riders also, yeah, they're also very excited about it. Oh, 20,000, over 20,000 riders in the space of 3 years.
3 years. Yeah, I think
Hmm.
the way they treat their riders also because so when you go on the Child Deck app, when you're placing order, so there are two type of fees you see. So there's a delivery fee and a service fee. So the amount you see for that delivery fee goes straight to the riders. They're not taking anything from it.
Interesting.
So they've
Very
separated it. So
interesting.
so when the rider sees it, the rider knows what he or she is collecting.
Hmm.
So with that one, you can plan. I can tell myself, okay, if I need to take delivery from this area to this area, and I want to make, let's say, 20,000 naira in a day, I know the number of deliveries I need to aim for. So it's very easy for those riders to plan their day.
Interesting. I'm sure our audience in their mind as they listen to this, they'll be asking themselves, how does one discover this magic source of customer insights and the problem? And I think that links a lot to our next slide here, where we start looking at deep validation. Like how do you validate these different stakeholders, their day and life, what they are going through, and discover the real needs and the real problems that you can then start designing solutions for. So I want to talk about deep validation because it's very clear that problem solution fit stage cannot be overlooked or bypassed. You may be 10 years in an operation, but maybe solving the wrong problem. Also, customer problems are always evolving. So these problems actually change, they shift over
Yeah.
time. So every innovator needs to continue this problem solution validate. So my question to you, Emmanuel, is what methods do you rely on to uncover the more profound user needs, just like child debt, for example, or
Okay.
the tensions behind the surface initial problems that we may see from a distance?
Okay. So now I like Lean Stack a lot, and what they talk about mainly is what you've put on the slide that problem cannot be defined but discovered. And the first thing they always say is don't start with building an MVP. That is a wrong place to start. So the first thing you need to do is to actually write down maybe the problem you're trying to solve in form of hypothesis. So you define your assumption, this is kind of things the problem you are trying to solve, this is the solution, this is how much people are willing to pay, these are the target audience. You need to be able to define the problem, solution, the customer segment, and also the market. And one thing I always tell people is, let's take an example of, if you are, let's say you are building a daycare service for people, for young children. Now, the mistake most of us make is we assume it is the mother that will make decision on the daycare, choice of daycare.
Mm.
So when I'm talking to potential customers, we're only focusing on mothers. But one thing I found out is sometimes it's actually the fathers that make the decision because they're the one paying.
Interesting.
Now, in the same case, when you're into a B2B, let's say you're building a solution, and one of the things we always do is we just go straight to the IT folks and start talking to them. Oh, I have this solution. I think we help you solve your problem. But ultimately, the decision might not be with the IT person, might be with the procurement team. So we need to be able to identify who our market, the segment actually is, who is willing to give us the check or give us a credit card to make for us to beat them. And the approach I normally take is, like I mentioned, is called problem discovery process. So
Interesting.
you write down what your hypothesis is, like the problem you're trying to solve. Then you need to be able to test that hypothesis. And the only way to test is to talk to actual potential customers. Do what we call like customer interviews. Ask them questions about the problem you're trying to solve. And always ensure that you don't have a question that results in a yes or no answer. You want them to be able to tell you what they're talking about. For instance, you might start by asking, okay, tell me how you currently do XYZ. That kind of things. Like if I take the process of the childcare service, for instance, you can ask them, so tell me, how do you currently handle your childcare? Then they will tell you, oh, maybe I have an aunt that comes in, or I go to drop my child off with a friend. They will tell you what they are currently doing right now. Then you can now ask a follow-up question. For instance, okay, if you could improve anything in what you currently do now, what would that be? They will talk to you. They will tell you what they think is wrong with the current product they are using. So that is a pointer to you for what you should be, maybe you might need to focus on, basically. So you continue that process. And what I learned is doing is a 4-stage process. You write down the hypothesis, you test that problem hypothesis by interviewing customers. Based on that, you refine your product, your product idea. Then you take that product again back to another set of customers to test it again. Because once you have that product concept, then you need to go and update your hypothesis, original hypothesis. Maybe that one now becomes version 2, or version 1.1, or version 1.12, or something, depending on how you want to name it. But the critical thing is, before you build anything, you have to ensure that you have something that people are willing to pay for. And the best way to validate this is through customer interviews. You have to talk to potential customers. You have to leave your house. And the interesting thing now is you can do a lot of meetings on Zoom or Google Meet, so you don't have to go physically. But you need to conduct that interview. There is no other way around it.
You know, what you say sounds so basic and simple. And as you talk about it, I realize some things that have happened even in my career in the past. This customer interview it sounds very basic, but a lot of times we overlook it. Another misconception is we think it's only for people that are building digital products.
Exactly.
I remember my time. I remember when I was still working at Procter and Gamble many years ago. It was always intriguing for me every time a vice president was flying into country to do a business review with us, and he would always insist he wants to have an in-home session with a mother. He wants to visit them in their homes. He wants to, and so we work with the agency and they set up these in-home visits for him. Either he's going to see how how they are using the diaper product and ask them some questions, or see how they do their washing of clothes. Very, very particular. And it was a routine process, and it wasn't one up. We did it
Yeah.
periodically where we sat down with these consumers and we started asking them questions to understand what they are experiencing, where their needs are, and if there are any difficulties whatsoever. And in our business in Hyber, we've been adopting this approach of leaving the slides, leaving the office, and getting in front of our customers and really talking to them about their own situation and what they are going through. And it's very, very, very powerful. So I want to really encourage our listeners, do not underestimate the power of getting in front of your users, your customers, and just talking to them and just asking them those very important questions. The insights you will get will be, in short, mind blowing. So, Emmanuel, it seems like, and moving on, it seems like this process of discovery is not. It's also it can also be very robust. It can be very robust. It can also be beyond just interviews and surveys. There's actually a whole sequence and a whole process, depending on the industry, depending on the problem, depending on the segment that one is trying to address. It's a string of different type of activities, from customer discovery to actual product testing to pilot programs. These actions help us conduct deep validation. So discovering problems can be a process. From your experience, what early signals tell you that the problem you are addressing is painful?
So I think the thing when you start seeing like a recurring pattern in the people you are talking to, so the problem is resurfacing every time you have a conversation with people about maybe what they are doing, for instance. So I can give you maybe a typical example. So when I was in Nokia, so we launched a service called Nokia Life. I think we're going to get to that later. And we discovered, okay, a lot of people that are using that service were also asking for other things from because, like you said, we keep doing polls. We kept talking to the customers to try and understand from their own side how they are using the service. So, and for us, it got to a point that we discovered that, okay, these people actually need something else beyond what we're offering them. And that allows us to form another hypothesis, which we tested in the market.
Interesting. Very interesting. We have we have a very interesting question from the audience, and this reminds me of my corporate days as well. I think this person asking the question is works in a large organization, and the question goes as follows: how can I guide against bias in problem identification, especially in unknown segments? Bias in the sense that, assuming management, for example, they already have a preconceived assumption of the problem, and they're like, this is the problem. And it might not be. You as an innovator, you have a hunch that this might not be correct. How do you overcome this bias, or how do you move forward beyond this bias, especially in a space that is unknown to you and is very new as an innovator within a
Yeah,
large organization, or like
this is really interesting.
indirectly,
Yeah,
when during your time in corporate,
yeah,
you definitely must have been encountering situations where there was some kind of resistance, where people
yeah.
they had some assumptions. Oh, this market behaves in this certain way. Maybe they have worked in a similar market and they have their biases. How did you move forward? How did you go past that
Yeah,
bias?
interesting. I think the first thing is to stop asking people about their problem. Don't ask them to define their problem. And there are so many reasons why I said so. One, like you said, they may not know what the problem is actually. They think this is a problem, that may not be the problem they are facing. Then, two, you are leading them on, because if
I
they tell
see.
you this is their problem, then they expect you to give them a solution, basically. And you talk about the confirmation bias. They know, they will tell you, oh, I knew it. This is the problem I'm facing. And so the approach I will take basically is to ask them to tell me what they're currently doing. What are you currently doing in your operations? What challenges are you facing? Not problems now. What challenges are you facing? What one thing do you think, if you add to this, it will make your life easier? Basically. And when you are doing that, you are not talking about problems, but you are just having a conversation around their day to day. For a typical example, let's say you want to build a solution for a project manager, for instance. It will be wrong for you to go and ask them, tell me your problem. The approach I will take is to sit down with that project manager and say, tell me how your typical day goes. And by the time you start, the person will tell you, okay, maybe I will start my day, look at my to-do list for the day. And before the third sentence, the person will have said something that is like a pay point, or something that you can see as a recurring pattern in everybody you're talking to around that project management space. And once you have that, it's very easy to point it out to the person and say, okay, sorry, you thought your problem is this. But from our conversations, these are the things I find out that not really a problem, but if you implement this, it might help you to achieve more resources, more results, basically. So I would say, don't let's stop asking people directly about their problems.
Yes.
Rather, let's ask them what they're currently doing and how their day is. Then from there, it can pinpoint one thing that you think might be able to help them or to alleviate their work.
Very interesting. And I think this even leads us to the next use case here. And one thing we learned, I mean, in Hyber, one thing we learned working with our customers and working on various innovation projects is that continuous cycle of validation. And like you said, framing the questions and keeping an open mind is very, very essential because we ourselves, as innovators, might even have a particular bias. So in this case, we knew that, oh, logistics is a problem in the value chain as it relates to recyclable materials. But as we continue to validate, not just with one stakeholder, but with multiple stakeholders along the value chain, be it the waste generators, be it the end customers, the brands, the government, the off-takers, we started seeing a string of other patterns that began to inform the nature and the interaction of different problems that then led to an actual main problem that we then said, okay, let's start building a holistic solution around. So I would also add to that continuous validation also helps the interviews, the discovery sessions, the testing, the solution testing, the pilots you will do using fidelity tools. So you don't need to build something so robust. You can start with prototypes using fidelity tools and then start enhancing and then focusing on the core basics so that you can validate very quickly what the users and customers actually want. And this also sets us up for another conversation, Emmanuel, because so now you've talked to the customers, you've validated some things, you've started discovering what those problems actually are, you now need to design a solution, or let's call it now, an MVP that fits that problem. Okay. You want to build something that is testable, you want to build something that is usable, and you want to build something that is lovable. However, the big temptation is while you're building this, you want to build an ideal solution. So, like we mentioned earlier, we want everything to kind of be there. This takes time, it takes resources. But after building that ideal solution, you then realize that it's not really the right one. And this whole thing of scoping and iteration comes to the surface. So how do you systematically identify the riskiest assumptions to address first in your MVP as an innovator?
So when you're talking to people at the problem discovery phase, you need to be able to narrow down to 1 to 3 things that people are willing to pay for in the immediate. And thank God we have a lot of tools now that allows us to be able to put something together. Even we are not a technical founder, you are still able to build something that you can take to the market to test your assumptions. For instance, there are a lot of AI tools out there in the market now. There is Replit, there is Lovable, there is Bolt, there is even Bubble, which is a low-code tool that allows you to be able to build your website basically and add payment gateway to it, because what you want to test is that people are willing to pay for that service. The other thing, what some other people have done is, I think there's a case in Nigeria when Jumia started, then Sabuta Kazo or something at the time. And many people will notice that the first 6 months, Jumia was getting most orders wrong at that time. And the reason was because there was a lot of manual operations behind the scene. Before they invested in technology, they were trying to validate that, okay, there's actually a market for this problem they are trying to solve. So right now, whether you're working somewhere and you want to build something on the side, it doesn't require you to spend more than maybe 1 or 2 hours every day on Replit or Lovable or both. And the interesting thing is they charge you like $20, $25 a month for you to have access to be able to put something together, and which you cannot go take to the market. And also, we need to learn to build in the public, which means as you are building, you are testing. Don't build and say, okay, until you have something perfect before you approach customers. If you are very active on Twitter or LinkedIn, you can post maybe the landing page you've built and even ask people to sign up to be notified when you are like, what someone has done in the past was use that landing page to gather details of people that are willing to pay with a promise of giving them maybe 2 months free or X percentage discount when they launch. So that will give you an idea of if people are even interested in that problems. Then 2, it will give you like a database of people that you can test with before you go public. Because when people have shown interest in the what you're trying to build, an interesting thing is not only by building landing page alone. When you're doing the customer interviews, you can also get consent from people. That okay, if I go live, or should I come back to you if you have the solution for you to test, get them to commit. So that will give you an idea of, okay, the number of people that are willing to use your service. And if you are spending $20 or $50 or $100 max on an MVP that you're building yourself, it's going to be clear to you whether it's something that is going to make money for you or something that you need to shut down. And the interesting thing is you don't need to get a technical co-founder. There's one thing that someone said recently. It's one of the maybe partners. He said we're getting to the area where we might see a $1 billion one-man business very soon.
Interesting. From what you are saying, one thing I'm taking away from this is to identify the riskiest assumptions. It's like you need to continue to do rapid testing to really understand what assumptions are working. And to do this rapid testing, you need really low fidelity tools. One example from our side is we wanted to automate a process, just like Jumia. We wanted to really understand what is the end-to-end process and what are the right steps. So when we set up the process, of course, through the observation and insights from the users, we didn't build a product. We didn't build any digital product. We actually just took Google Forms. And we use Google Forms as the node for each user or each stage of the process. And it was mimicking the interaction, it was mimicking the interface that users will then use to interact. We and the users will interact at every given stage of the process. So I would say that rapid testing is something that is really, really powerful in identifying the riskiest assumptions down the road. Another follow-up question I have for you is, how do you determine which features to exclude to deliver the least viable products?
Okay, so when you're looking about feature to exclude, it has to be something that the question I always ask myself is, if I don't have this feature right now, will the customer still be able to pay for what I'm bringing to the market? If the answer is yes, leave the feature. Because that feature might be nice to have to you, but if it's not a deal breaker, then push it, just add it to the backlog. Your focus should be, I always do things, I have a list of features I want to take to the market and I try to rank them. One is more like, this one is critical. It is very critical. For a customer to use this service, they need to be able to do this. For instance, when I talk about features, for instance, a customer needs to be able to maybe sign up and pay. So that one is a must, that kind of thing. But when it comes to actually using that product itself, then the question will now become, if I don't add this feature, will the customer still pay for the service? If the answer is yes, just drop it.
Interesting. And I think our use case 3 is a classic example of this feature sequencing with something you did during your time at Nokia, building something for farmers. Do you want to shed some more insights on this in terms of feature prioritization and sequencing?
Yeah. Okay. So what happened in Nokia then was Nokia had this service called Nokia Live Tools. So the service was live in India, Indonesia, and China, and they were trying to launch in Nigeria. And the reason behind it was Nokia wanted to tie people to Nokia phones, so that by the time you were thinking of buying a new phone, you always come back to Nokia phones. That's the same thing BlackBerry was doing that time with their BlackBerry Messenger. So at the time, we had this list of services that we thought would be relevant for the Nigerian market. But what we did was we actually did like a market research, market study. We conducted we started with just a general survey. And from the survey, we now down to, I think, like maybe top 10 services. We now did what we call like customer interviews. We actually engaged potential customers. We spoke with them one-on-one. And after then, we now down to like 4. We now add what we call like a focus group sections in different parts of the countries. And ultimately, we discovered, okay, those 4 services were things that we needed to launch with. One was market prices for farmers. Then we add learn English. Then we add the pregnancy tips for pregnant women. Then we add score alerts, because a lot of Nigerians love sports. They want to know what is happening during a match section. So when we launched, one thing we discovered was when we launched the market prices at the time, the idea was to provide market for, I think, 26 commodities in Nigeria to anybody at the time. And we discovered that most of the people subscribing to that service at the time were farmers. And one other thing we found out was the farmers were not subscribing to the service in their own states. They were selecting other states because the service allowed you to select your location and the language in which you want to get the content. We were doing the content in 3 major languages at the time: English, PG English, and Hausa language at the time. So we discovered there was a farmer in Zaria that subscribed to the service for your state. And one of the things that we discovered, because like you said, we need to keep talking to the customers. I had to keep talking to them, going through the Greek extension workers. I did a lot of market visits to go and meet, so that to meet the farmers and to understand how do I use the service at the time. So one of the things they started doing was, since they started getting the market prices, most of them started cutting off the middlemen, because they discovered what margin they were giving away by selling to the middlemen. So some of them put money resources together, rented a truck, and took their produce to Ibadan directly themselves. And they made more money. One other thing we found out also was most of them subscribed to learn English themselves. And they were taking, or they had the notes where they were taking, because the way the Learn English service was designed, Monday to Saturday, you get content delivered to you. On Sunday, you get a test, something to test your knowledge of what you've learned the last 6 days. And so we end up discovering that people actually subscribing to Learn English and market prices together, which for us was a huge finding. But one thing we did in the initial stage was we made the service free for people for 4 weeks. And it became a challenge at the end of the 4 weeks trial to get people back on board. So we had to tweak the model. And the change we made that shut up our subscription number was, from the time you are subscribing to the free trial, we got your consent to move it to paid service. That actually reduced the churn rate and increase our retention rate rapidly. And the only caveat was, we asked people, we notify you by 7 days to the end of the anniversary date, asking you to unsubscribe if you don't want to get the service again. And for us, it became so interesting. Then one other service that we had at the time were pregnancy tips. As we all know, the pregnancy cycle is like 40 weeks. So which means at the end of the 40 weeks period, if someone subscribed and remained for the 40 weeks period, after 40 weeks, you might lose that person. So one of the things we discovered, we started talking to people and said, okay, how could we keep these customers on this service perpetually, even after the pregnancy tip service? And we launched what we call the childcare tips. And what the childcare tip did then was very interesting. When it's getting to like 2 weeks to the end of the pregnancy tips, because when you're subscribing, you put in your last menstrual period or expected delivery date. So the system automatically calculates your pregnancy, maybe how long you're pregnant, if you're pregnant. So when it's 2 weeks, when the system discovers, okay, you're like 2 weeks away from putting to bed, we start cross-selling the childcare tips to you. And the idea for the childcare tips is it to give you daily tips on when your child needs to go for immunization, when you start saying, for maybe a newborn baby, things you need to start noticing. When you see this, you need to call a doctor. When you see this, you don't need to be scared. These are the things you needed to do. And those contents were coming from doctors. Nokia was just a platform. One other interesting thing I want to mention before and this section is the bearer was SMS for this content.
Interesting.
Like I mentioned, and that is the same thing Child did, which really got me interested. When you get the content, you see a beautiful UI, but the bearer behind the scene SMS. That ensures that no matter where you are, you always get your daily content delivered to you.
Very, very interesting. I mean, these two use cases really explain the evolution of the solution itself and how that is driven by insights from the customer or users and the understanding of the problem that the solution is then trying to solve. And we are gradually coming to the end of the session. And as we conclude, there is this big decision for innovators when they are building the solution. Do we pivot or do we persevere? And in the last two cases, it shows that we are there's a mix between they were kind of you were doing you actually doing you were pivoting, that you were moving from one level of solution to another, and you are also doubling down to enhance the churn rate. In other words, the loyalty of the customers, and really getting them to pay for the service. So three choices normally innovators face as they build or deploy their MVPs. One is, do we pivot? So that is, if an existing solution is not addressing the real problem, can it be tweaked? The second destination is, do we fold up? Do we just stop and just, count our losses and just move on? In this case, if the solution cannot be tweaked, or the problem is not just attractive enough, there is no shame in failing forward. Then the last one is, do we double down? So there's a fit, and you now want to accelerate that solution to begin to really cover a large audience of customers. So as we wrap up, I want to ask, because you mentioned some matrix in your last two cases. I want you to spend some time and talk some more to us about what quantitative and qualitative matrix signal true problem solution fit versus what we call vanity,
Yeah.
matrix.
So I think for me, the number one metric is revenue. If you if your solution is not bringing any revenue, then you are wasting your time, because you have bills you have to pay. You have server hosting, you have maybe staff. Let's even say you're not paying. Let's say you are the only one, you're not paying yourself, but you have to pay for hosting, you have to pay for some things. So if your revenue is not catching up with your expenses, overtaking your expenses, then it's better to just shut it down. Then the other things that I was looking at in Nokia Lab at the time was, I was checking the daily activation rate. So of everybody that bought an eligible Nokia phone, how many of them actually activated that service? That was one. Two, I was looking at the daily churn rate. How many people that have subscribed in the last 7 days, how many of them have left? Three, because we introduced a freemium model, so I was looking at what percentage of the free users actually got converted to paid. And that was why I said, let us to tweak the model initially, because initially, once you come to the end of your subscription period, free trial, you have to enter the app again and fill the information again. So we tweak it that allow us to get your consent from the beginning, the moment you sign for the free trial period. And one of the things we found out was, a lot of people actually did not leave unless they had data problem. And one problem that we were able to solve at the time, we started with doing a monthly charge subscription. Now, we made a tweak by implementing a weekly subscription, and our active user base jumped. Because at the time, we were charging 200 naira per month. And one of the things we found out from people and from the network operators, was a lot of people didn't have 200 naira at the time on their phone. People always loaded the credit to make calls or whenever they need it. So by the time we slashed it from charging 200 naira a month to, I think we implemented maybe 70 naira a week, we actually got a lot more people on the service. And also, we did something that if you miss a payment for 1 week, we don't automatically unsubscribe you. We gave you 1 week leadway, free period, and tell you we're going to bill you at the next billing cycle. A lot of people did not unsubscribe from that service, and the revenue actually increased. So you need to be able to track those numbers. Your activation rate is very important. Your churn rate is very, very important. Then revenue, even You need to track your revenue, especially the lifetime value of your customers. If you are spending, let's say you are spending $2 to bring a customer in, you need to have an idea of how long it take you to be able to get that $2 from the customers.
Very interesting. I really love the way you have simplified these metrics. And from my understanding, it's almost like it's three things. One, how quickly are people coming into using the product? So sign up. How quickly are they leaving, or how are they staying? Churn rate. And then how are they paying? Revenue. Okay, how much are they paying? How much value are you getting back from the solution, revenue? So that's really it's really very interesting and insightful. Let's finally let's leave our audience with some tools. We've really talked to them about how important this is, how to do it, where to focus on. I would love to leave the audience with one or two tools that you use in building solutions that really have a fit with problems.
Yeah. So interestingly, the link canvas is something that I think a lot of us know about, but we don't use it. And what this does, what this helps us to do is, in just one page, it helps us to be able to define, answer some maybe like 7 questions, basically. What problem you are trying to solve? What solution are you bringing to the market to solve that problem? Then the key metrics you need to track. Why are you different from other people? Basically, your value advantage, the customer segment you are focusing on, then talks about the solution, why you are the best equipped to solve this. And earlier when I talk about problem discovery, before you start that problem discovery journey, you need to have your version 1 of the link canvas filled.
Mm.
Because what you are doing with those customer interviews, you are validating all these assumptions you put on this document.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you come back, you update it, you have version 1.01 or version 1.2, depending on how you want to name it. And that continues in cycle until you have something that people are willing to pay for. So aside using link canvas, I mentioned some AI-enabled rapid expansion tools earlier on. One is Replit, there is Lovable, and there is both. What they allow you to do is they allow you to, once you've hit what you think a solution is, you are not a technical co-founder, but with just the way we are talking now, you can write instruction to the AI tool and to build something for you. So that way you have something that you can easily take to the market to validate if you're actually solving a real problem or not.
These are really interesting times because you can move very fast from problem to solution and then to rapid development using AI tools today. What an exciting time to be on Earth. Let's wrap up, and I would like to summarize and thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your time today. We are really very grateful for your sharing your experience with us in this very exciting topic. And three takeaways for me: problems are often not what they seem. Don't fall into the trap. So don't just define problems, discover them. Secondly, beyond bias, be intentional to go into the root causes. So leave your biases aside, have an open mind, and use the problem discovery process to really validate and discover the real root causes of what those problems are. Um, get out of the office, go in front of your users, go in front of your customers. The more prospects you have, the better. But I would like to turn to Emmanuel. And Emmanuel, what's that one thing you would like our audience to leave with today as we wrap up the call?
So I think for me is you don't need a lot of resources to actually launch your products. You just need to ensure that you are solving the right problem for the right target audience.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I want to say big thank you to our audience calling in from different parts of the world. I want to extend our gratitude to Emmanuel for spending an hour of his afternoon. He's in Canada at the moment. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your time. And for our listeners, if you need help with problem solution fit, we at Hyber, we are here to help you. We have a range of services that can enable you get to that place of problem solution fit very, very quickly. We want to continue to encourage our listeners to solve big problems. The world needs innovation leaders like you. You need problem solvers like us. Thank you so much for your time. And next month, we will gather again for our September innovation series, and it is going to take things to the next level. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and do have a wonderful evening and a restful weekend. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Have a wonderful
Thanks,
day.
everyone. Yeah, bye, everyone.
Bye.